Thanks for joining me for another episode of What's That All About? I am doing something that I actually learned about in school, of all places. I'm not even sure it's still something that they teach, but which I find interesting only because, and maybe my school was progressive or something, I don't know, but the Philadelphia experiment. Okay, now there's like movies, there's books, there's, a bunch of websites out there. It's sort of got its own little legend to it, right? And but I grew up believing it. I don't know anything else, so I'm kind of telling the story from the perspective of how I learned it. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt if you want, and call me crazy, which that's fine. I'm used to it, but the Philadelphia experiment was supposed to be, one of the greatest achievements in history. And the idea was to make an entire ship disappear. Amazement of it to the people who claim to have seen it is nothing less than extraordinary. Not only did this ship that I'll tell you more about disappear off radar, but it disappeared before someone's eyes, before witnesses' eyes, okay? That alone just should give you pause, right? Now, according to the legend, the experiment was a total success. One, actually, but for the several things that happened. It created an absolutely horrific experience, and disastrous and inexcusable and painful, horrifying experience for the skeleton crew that was on the ship that was used as part of the experiment. The actual experiment did take place in July of 1943 in the Philadelphia Naval Yard. And many members of the scientific team at the time are said to have been very concerned and felt like something was drastically wrong, yet they spoke amongst themselves, but not to anyone that mattered, that could have stopped this atrocity from happening. The ship involved was called the USS Eldridge. And the concept of the experiment was, again, a way to design something that could make a ship disappear into thin air and literally reappear somewhere else. Okay? The bizarre idea, or the bizarre part of the story, is it really did go on to kind of take on a life of its own by, there was a movie called The Philadelphia Experiment, who, I don't know if you've ever seen Eddie and the Cruisers, but Michael Parr was in that, or Paré. I'm not sure. I think he's French or Canadian, but he played Eddie and the Cruisers anyway. So I'm not really sure that has anything to do with anything, but it's what popped in my head. But it also, at the time, this experiment was also designed as a countermeasure against German U-boats. So Allied convoys were extraordinarily important to the men on the front line fighting in World War II. They brought them their weaponry, their goods, and everything that kept them going. But they were and let's put it this way. They were slow, clumsy, and outdated. In 1942 alone, more than 1,000 of them were torpedoed and sunk because of how just sluggish they were in the water. They were basically defenseless against the German forces. So the Navy developed a more maneuverable kind of warship, and it was called the Destroyer Escort, DE. The vessel was basically, it was like the anti-submarine, sort of like it was meant to go, it didn't go necessarily fast, but it was smaller and could take very, the it could make a big difference for the war efforts. So now, believers of the Philadelphia experience say there were plans to give the Destroyer Escort the supreme advantage, again, over the submarines, which was invisibility. And it was the brainchild of none other than Albert Einstein. Well, I think we all know him. In fact, Einstein was working for the Navy at the time, but he was, let's see, officially, he was working on ideas for conventional weapons and building torpedoes and underwater mines. But in reality, what he was working on was this very experiment. And according to an eyewitness, I'll call him Carl for lack of a better name. And it's close to what his name really was. But the Navy used a variation of Einstein's unified field theory, which at the time, at this exact point in time, it was incomplete. But they used it regardless. So the Navy knew that what they were going to be experimenting with wasn't honed, it wasn't proven to be completed, it had not been applied to anything else small on a smaller scale. They were just diving in head first, deep end, no holes barred, all go no quit. Let's just make a USS enormous, battleship disappear. Cheese and crackers. All right, so they were going to use this. So regardless, they wanted this to bend light to render the ship invisible, and then it would be surrounded by like an electromagnetic fog. Okay, see, I'm showing you pictures of something that, it's what do you call it? Artist rendition of what it could possibly have been like, but it's somehow, it was supposed to be like. It was supposed to work, no problem. It was a blind leap of faith, though, and the consequences were just horrifying, as I explained at the beginning. Another insider, I'm going to call him Al, okay? He claimed to have been on the scientific team 3 days prior to the experiment. The other team members, like I said, they were starting to talk about the experiment upcoming and their considerable concerns about how it was going to play out, because this was just not going to their mindset, not going to work. There was too many variables that hadn't been vetted, so to speak. So they were, again, not talking to anyone but each other about this, which got them nowhere. No one was in charge of the actual experiment ever heard of their concerns. So, as I said, in July of 1943, in the Philadelphia Navy Yard, the experiment takes place. Okay, well, so there was a powerful electromagnetic field that engaged around the entire USS Eldridge. With a skeleton crew on board, the officers watching at a safe distance, the only eyewitnesses, like this guy Carl who came forward, and he was a deckhand on a nearby ship called the Liberty. Now, Carl claims to have seen the ship engulfed in a green, almost like a St. Elmo's fiery fog. And I'm showing you pictures of that now. I don't know which side it's on. It's there somewhere. Wherever I didn't lean more towards, it's there. As the electromagnetic fog swallowed the USS Eldridge, strange optical effects manifested. Carl watched. He was able to insert the fog even extended to where he was, and he could put his arm in and basically not see his arm. So of course that freaked him out. He took it right out. But he described a terrific flow of energy through his arm. You could feel it he described it, there was tingling, but there was also fear. Lots and lots of fear. Reasonably so. Now, onlookers were completely astonished. The ship had become invisible to radar, and then eventually it was invisible to the eye. Optically, it went bye-bye, okay? So basically, it appeared that the experiment had worked. Then, an even stranger effect started to happen. Teleportation, okay? The people reporting on this experiment, these Carl, Al, the people who did, the witnesses that did finally come forward that were kind of missed in the NDA onslaught, like the non-disclosure agreements that the Navy forced some people to, the other witnesses to sign. These people somehow dodged that bullet. So they were coming forward, but as the Eldridge, they disagree about the actual events, how they unfolded next, okay? As the Eldridge started to reappear, there was a sudden flash of light. This was in the Philadelphia Naval Yard. And then the ship vanishes again, instantly. And then simultaneously, 300 miles away, the ship appeared in Norfolk, Virginia's shipyard. For only a few moments. And as she again dematerialized, it reappeared with the same mysterious green fog in the Philadelphia shipyard. Now, throughout the seemingly miraculous journey of the USS Eldridge, the ship appeared unscathed. The same could not be said for the skeleton crew left on board. The clips I'm going to show you next, you won't see me, but I'm going to tell you, the men were molecularly attached to the ship. Yeah, I didn't misread that. Bonded to it. As you can see in these pictures, men were driven insane. Even some caught fire. Limbs were missing. You can see, I mean, look at that. There's a guy there that has half of his body gone. But they were in the bulkheads. And some bodies were literally burned into the steel, and they died or were dying. You could still hear them screaming because they hadn't died right away. And then there were some sailors that just vaporized, okay? Vaporized entirely, never to be seen again. So the main problem was that the human nervous system, it couldn't take the exposure of the level of magnetic and electronic fields, and it caused unbelievable amounts of damage to these men, the ones who did survive. And the nerve damage was so severe that some of the victims were institutionalized, but some were falsely classified as missing in action. And unbelievably, the Navy never, ever told the families what happened to their loved ones. They just said they were missing in action, never to be seen again. Families had nothing. No explanations, no truthful ones. They just thought the Navy's, they're going to make them sound like heroes, and that'll be better than what really happened to them, which was they were basically tortured. Now, there were other side effects. There was a bar fight of some kind on the Navy Yard, where, a waitress had said they were a little, like a regular run-of-the-mill bar fight with sailors. Sometimes they get, drunk like a sailor. Well, these guys were drunk like sailors, and they were getting into a little bit of a scuffle with other people. And all of a sudden, I know I just turned pink. I'm going to keep going. We're just going to deal with it. My computer gets very warm. But anyway, these people actually started to become invisible, like parts of their body. They would start to dematerialize. And a witness, a waitress came forward and even said that she saw it actually happen. And she was like, what? And she couldn't believe it. She came back to see the sailors. She went outside to look for them. Gone. Couldn't find, it was no sign of one of these sailors. So, I mean, that all by itself is enough to make you just be like, there's got to be some truth to this legend. There's got to be. And now, needless to say, the Navy Deep Sixed this whole entire project, which they actually called Project Rainbow, ironically. Gosh, I always think of rainbows to be... Well, maybe that's why my computer turned pink for a second. But honestly, officially, the project was closed down. But I mean, lots of people think it really wasn't, and that they continued with experiments. A lot of information seeped out, and I think thanks to Carl, a witness, and Al, a witness, and being on the scientific team, I really do think that they have a lot to offer in the midst of all of this. But as you can imagine, this story is disturbing on so many levels. To know what happened to those sailors, not only does it turn your stomach, but it makes you wonder, what the hell kind of government do we have protecting us. I don't know. I mean, they're just so, it's almost like we're disposable. Like we're just kind of we're their own experiments if they want to. I mean, think about, like, I know I'm going kind of derailing a little bit, but like I live in Idaho and all I see in the sky all the time are these people call them chemtrails. There's no proof that they're actually chemtrails, obviously, but they are. When I tell you they coat the skies sometimes, it's unsettling and unnerving, and I have pictures of it that I'm not even going to show because I don't want to get in trouble. But and we do have an Air Force base that has F-18s go by really, really low. Of course, I can never ever get outside fast enough because those suckers move. But one of these days, I'm going to catch them when they go over. They always like belly roll when they barrel roll, I guess it's called. I call it the belly roll when they go over our houses, because they're so low that I can basically see into the cockpit when I've seen them go over. But I'm all thumbs when it comes to my camera. I'm trying to get that sucker to go and video it, but it doesn't work. It's stupid. Just move fast. But anyway, I don't know if you believe the story. I don't know if you have your own theories about this story, but I just wanted to share. I've known about it my whole life because I heard about it in school. I don't know if maybe I had like a rogue history teacher that was military or something, but I definitely was taught this sitting at a desk in a classroom. Now, maybe it was one of those Friday classes where they show you the movie and you're just like, oh, I'm napping. I always thought this kind of stuff was neat. But anyway, I'm glad you stopped by, and I hope you're staying happy and healthy and stay weird. And till next time, take care. Bye.